It's the International Soccer Preview. We are Soccerphiles Canada. Welcome to Series 30, looking at the players of the 2025 Gold Cup. This episode is looking at the players of Panama. Part 2, the selection. Here we go. Hello and welcome to the International Soccer Preview by Soccerphiles Canada. I'm Kevin and this is Series 30 on the players of the 2025 CONCACAF Gold Cup. This episode is the second part of our coverage of Panama's players. The final roster is released and we are looking at the final selections. In part 1, we compiled a list of players and their likelihood of reaching the final squad. That was based mostly on their participation since the 2023 Gold Cup, that is. We considered a few other factors besides that, and we introduced some of the players, the main players at least, giving some biographical and career information on them. In part 2 here, though, our focus is on the final selections, and this mediacast is divided into 3 sections. Section 1 is some preliminary information on the team. We actually do repeat some of what we said in part 1, but more quickly. We want to create a narrative for the position summaries in Section 2, so this information provides a framework for that. In Section 2, well, that's the main part of the mediacast here. We review the list that we compiled in part 1, and we'll tell you who made the final squad and the preliminary squad. We're also trying to predict the starters here, and to do that, we examine each position and tell the story of who has played in the role over the last period since the last Gold Cup. And we'll also look at the lineups for the warm-up games to see if they give any final clues as to who will start. And in Section 3, we'll start with our Spotlight Review, a summary of the players who made the squad and our predicted starters. We'll also review surprise selections and non-selections and any new players, as well as update on injuries. Okay, let us jump right in. And Section 1 then, some team information. Beginning with the squad numbers here. So 26 players were allowed for this cup, and Panama is bringing 26 players, and they are chosen from the preliminary squad, which was released, and they had 60 players on that squad. So this means they had to disappoint 34 of the players, cut them from the preliminary squad, and to reach that final squad. Let's take a look at their recent games. So we also, in part 1, we did look at games over the period. And we're going to review that here. Also, we looked at the managerial situation, actually not that complex for Panama. But here, we're going to combine those two because, again, kind of sets up the framework for understanding the position summaries in part 2. Reviewing formations will also help with that, but we are going to go faster than in part 1. So we begin with manager Thomas Christiansen. This is pretty easy. He's going to be manager all the way through. He's actually signed until July of 2026 after the World Cup, and he's been there since 2020, so a good run, and they've been quite successful under him, including the 2023 Gold Cup, which is where we start our look at the team over the recent period. 6 games there in June of 2023. And in July of that year, they played a friendly, kind of an experimental friendly, using kind of B-team players and new players to recruit, kind of a recruiting game. In the fall of 2023, they played the 2023-24 Nations League group stage games. That is 4 games in League A for Panama, September and October, and their success there led them to the finals. That is 2 games in November 2023, the quarterfinals, which they passed to reach the finals, the semi-final in March of 2024. And the final there, 4 games in all. No, that was not the final. That was the third place match against Jamaica. Sorry. Nevertheless, 4 games. Before the Copa America, winning the quarterfinal in November 2023 qualified them for the Copa America, and then they play before the Copa America friendly, they actually start World Cup qualifying for CONCACAF. That is 2 games in early June 2024. So those matches acted as warm-up games for the Copa America tournament. But in addition, they did play a friendly prior to the tournament as well. So a very busy June for them. Those 3 games, and then in the Copa America itself, they were one of only 2 CONCACAF teams to pass the group stage, so that added up to 4 games in the Copa America, so 7 games all in all in June. However, they could relax in September and October because they did not have to play in the group stage of the 2024-25 Nations League. They were given a bye to the quarterfinals there. So instead, in the fall of 2024, they played a couple of friendlies, 2 friendly games, again, kind of using those games to experiment with the team and perhaps add some players. We got to the fall of 2024, November of 2024. They play in the quarterfinals, this one, also winning, and so getting to the semifinals in March of 2025. So that's 4 games in all. This time they did reach the final. And in February, actually, they had also played 2 friendlies. Again, those were more recruitment games. In February of 2025. So those are the games we looked at in part 1. In part 2 here, we have a couple of extra games to look at. In early June, just recently, they played the remaining World Cup qualifiers in round 2 of 3. And so we will look at those games, and those will be important for us to look at who's being used in their most recent games. Let's take a look at formations. You would think with the same manager that it would be fairly stable, but no, they used 7 different formations over the period. The one they used the most was a 3-2-2-2-1, which they used in 13 of their 30 games, so 43% of games. And then the second most used one, also a bit unusual, a 4-5-1 formation in 7 of the games, or 23%. And then the rest of the games are made up of 5 different formations used 3 times or less. We won't go into as much detail on that as we did in part 1, but we will say that a 3-man central defense was used 76% of the time. So almost, or a little more than 3/4 of the time, we're looking at 3 central defenders. Also, a single forward was used 90% of the time. You can see that in both formations that they used primarily. So 3 at the back and 1 up top. That's good to keep in mind as we go through the player summaries. Let's do our last order of business here. They're warm-up games. Well, they were actually quite serious games. The first one, oh my goodness, I messed up. The first one was on June 7th, and I put the wrong graphic on the screen. That's why. On June 7th, again, these are World Cup 2026 qualifying games, and a 2-0 win in Belize pretty much guaranteed them passage. The top 2 in each group passed. However, to actually win the group, they would have to win at home to Panama on June 10th, and they did so, winning 3-0. I felt it was a bit risky there because they put out a fairly experimental team for that. Nevertheless, they won and won the group and advanced to the next round of the World Cup. We're not so concerned with the result, actually, but with the lineups, that is our main concern. And we are going to start our main business here, moving on to section 2 and looking at the candidates. Okay, so we won't go through Thomas Christiansen's successes over the period as we did in part one. We'll just say that he was selected for the final squad. We'll consider him selected for the final squad there, and he will lead them through the tournament. Thomas Christiansen. Let's look at what we came up with in part one for the goalkeepers. So we have a definite candidate in Orlando Mosquera, and he was selected for the squad, and a likely candidate in Cesar Samudio. However, surprisingly, he was not selected for the squad, just made the preliminary squad there, so that takes us by surprise. Our possible candidate, Luis Mejia, was selected for the squad. So who is it that makes up the third goalkeeper? It is our possible but unlikely candidate, J.D. Gunn, taking the place from Samudio there. And the other possible but unlikely, Eddie Roberts, just making the preliminary squad there. We had one more candidate on the list, and that was seemingly off the squad, Jose Guerra, and he was not selected even for the preliminary squad. All right, let's go back and look at the position over the period and who's been in it. Well, it was our definite candidate, Orlando Mosquera, starting all 6 games in the 2023 Gold Cup. And frankly, he has started almost all of the games over the entire period. When he was out in September 2023, Luis Mejia and Cesar Samudio appeared in the 2023 Nations League group stage, but Mosquera returned to start the October games. Luis Mejia also replaced him for the June 2024 World Cup qualifiers. Mosquera was on the bench for those games, and Samudio has been on the bench consistently. However, Mejia was not called up in the fall of 2024, which gave J.D. Gunn a seat on the bench. However, Mejia did return for the March 2025 games, Orlando Mosquera playing as a starter through that whole period. So we naturally expected that the definite starter would be Orlando Mosquera, and at the end of part one, we assumed Luis Mejia, we thought, would be the first backup keeper, and Cesar Samudio second. Well, we already know that that's not going to be the case, but let's look at the recent games to see who started. Of course, we were expecting Orlando Mosquera, but taken by surprise here, Luis Mejia starting both of those games. So, what do you say to that? We have to change our prediction then. Here now we have no definite starter, and we're going to say Mejia is the likely starter now, and the possible starter, Orlando Mosquera. Okay, so unexpected things in the goalkeeper situation there. Let's move on upfield and see if we have any more surprises coming our way. Okay, for central defenders, we have a lot of candidates. That's because they primarily use a 3-man defense. So this is a bit complex because we're dealing kind of with 3 positions in one gulp. But let's look at the candidates first. We have 3 definite candidates. The first, Jose Cordoba, was selected for the squad, as was Fidel Escobar, the second at the definite level, and Edgardo Farina, the third one. So all of our definite candidates are selected for the final squad. We have 2 likely candidates. The first of those is Carlos Harvey. He was selected. However, the second, Roderick Miller, was only named to the preliminary squad, didn't make the final cut there. He actually had a knee problem from mid-January to early May, and we reported in section or in part 1 that he was back playing on May 10th. So maybe continued problems with that knee problem played a part in his non-selection for the squad there, but it doesn't seem to be. It just seems to be he was not selected. We have two candidates at the multiple level, Giovanni Ramos and Martin Krug, and both of those only made the preliminary squad. And then three possible but unlikely candidates, two of them making the preliminary squad there, Eduardo Anderson on the preliminary squad and Eric Diaz. But the middle candidate, Reniel Perdomo, not even making the preliminary squad. And then we had four players seemingly off the squad here. Turns out they're not. The first one, Andres Andrade, was selected for the final squad. So he is the fifth central midfielder we have. The second one, Harold Cummings, seemingly off the squad, but not completely because he was selected for the preliminary squad there. However, the other two, Richard Peralta, Giancarlos Vargas, not selected even for the preliminary squad. I promise you the list for each position won't be as long as this one. Let's talk about the situation over the period then, starting with the Gold Cup. In 2023. It was a three-man central defence there with Harold Cummings, now off the squad, in the centre, Fidel Escobar on the right, and Andres Andrade on the left. For all six of the games, except that Roderick Miller replaced Andrade in one game. And I'll just say, of all of those players, only Fidel Escobar survives for selection to this squad. Actually, Cummings' last game was in that tournament, and he was off the team. So Cummings was replaced by Jose Cordoba, who has become firmly entrenched in the team. So now we have Cordoba, Andrade, and Escobar continuing consistently until March of 2024. For a couple of games in that period, in the fall of 2023, it is a two-man central defence, but that only means that Andrade moves out to play as a left back when Eric Davis is there, we will see. Once again, Miller proves to be the backup player when one of those three is out. And after Andrade played his last game for the team in March 2024, Roderick Miller replaced him. Escobar is injured for the summer, and he is replaced by Edgardo Farina. So now it's Cordoba flanked by Carina on the right and Miller on the left. And that is the defense in the 2024 Copa America. Carlos Harvey becoming the backup when one of them is missing. Escobar, though, returned from injury for the October 2024 friendlies. He replaced Miller, and now we have Farina in the centre, Cordoba on the left, and Escobar becoming a right back when they moved to a two-man central defence, which they did in November of 2024. In that November 2024 set, Escobar takes a red card in the second game and then doesn't play in March of 2025. Miller is still injured, so Carlos Harvey becomes the third man alongside Cordoba and Farina. So sorry for the complex explanation there. There it is, though. It's really because we're covering three positions here, so it's quite a bit to juggle. What do we come out of that with, though? We come out with definite starters in our prediction. Definite starters, Jose Cordoba and Edgardo Farina. And then we have three possible starters in Fidel Escobar, Roderick Miller, and Carlos Harvey. Well, we have seen that Roderick Miller was not selected for the final squad, so he will be out of our predictions. In the warm-up games, we had a three-man defence in the first game. Bit of an odd formation there, actually, a 3-4-1-2. Anyway, it was Jose Cordoba, as we would expect. But then the other ones are Carlos Harvey and Fidel Escobar. And only Fidel Escobar starts both of these games. And in the second game, he is flanked by a returning Andre Andrade, who is back after a year-long absence there in a two-man defense. So it's a 4-2-3-1 more standard formation in the second game. However, that second game, to my surprise, is quite experimental in several positions. For example, Andrade coming back from the cold to start, and judging by the number of positions it's experimental in, we don't think it represents a big change in the starters. However, it is notable that Perino is not starting either of the two games, although he is named to the final squad. So that changes our predictions quite a bit. Now we're gun shy and we don't want to name a definite starter. We're down to likely starter. We think Jose Cordoba is a likely starter. But among the other players, it could be any of them lining up alongside probably Cordoba. So we have Fidel Escobar, Edgardo Farina, Carlos Harvey, and Andres Andrade. And I don't think we can be more specific than that. Okay, so that is the central defense, a big chunk of our work done. On the left backs, we're back to a one-man position, so it should be a bit more manageable. Let's look at the candidates there on the left side, and we have no definite candidate actually, but we do have Eric Davis as a likely candidate, and Jorge Gutierrez as a likely candidate also. Both of them made the preliminary squad. Eric Davis overcoming a couple of injuries over the period. He was an injury doubt, and we'll speak more to that in section 3. But the fact that he's selected for the squad at least tells us that he is well enough for that. Two possible candidates. The first is Omar Valencia. He was only selected for the preliminary squad, and so was Gabriel Brown, the other possible candidate. And then we had one other candidate that was seemingly off the squad, Andres Andrade. I think we actually talked about him above, so we won't repeat it here. Anyway, Andrade was selected for the squad, surprisingly. Okay, so that leaves us with Eric Davis and Jorge Gutierrez named to the final squad. Let's look at the position over the period. Eric Davis is really the default player in the position, whether that's as a left back or probably more often as a left winger, kind of pushing up to the left winger with the three-man central defense there. So there and going forward, it's actually the versatile midfielder Joel Barcenas replacing him when he is out. Though Barcenas only comes in when it's a winger position. When it's a left-back position, it was Andres Andrade replacing him, basically moving from central defense over to the left back. And during the period, Eric Davis was gone about half of the time. So he was there for the Nations League group stage in September and October 2023, but gone for the November 2023 and March 2024 games. So as you said, mostly it's Joel Barcenas replacing him there as a left winger. Davis returned to his starting position after that and played as a left back in the Copa America, where they used a 5-3-2 formation. However, he was injured again from October 2024, really up until the present, or until March of 2025. And with Andrade now off the team, he was replaced mostly by right back Cesar Blackman until the March 2025 games, when Jorge Gutierrez came in from the cold, actually, to replace Eric Davis in the position. So you can tell by the way I'm talking that we still consider the position to be Eric Davis's, even though he's gone quite a bit of the time. Let us tell you our predictions then. We won't put Eric Davis as a definite starter because he's absent too much. But we will put him as the likely starter. And really, we're looking at backup players when he's gone. So when it is a left back position, we now have either Cesar Blackman or Jorge Gutierrez in the March games at least. So that maybe he's coming into the position may mean that. And when it's a winger position, it's right winger Joel Barcenes. We've moved him to versatile midfielder here. Joel Barcenes when it's a left wing position. Okay, that is the situation to the end of part one, but let's see if what happens in the June World Cup qualifying games changes our opinion. Well, it is a three-man back line in the first game. So the position becomes a left winger, and it's actually a more attacking player filling the role there. It is left attacker Jose Luis Rodriguez coming in there. The second game is a more standard 4-2-3-1, so there is a left back, and just as in March, it's Jorge Gutierrez coming in. So maybe he has taken over the backup position, which might have become the starting position, or might become the starting position if Eric Davis is not fit. Okay, so we're going to change. We're going to stick with Eric Davis as the likely starter. But for the first backup, we're actually going to change Cesar Blackman to Andres Andrade. So now we think it could be Jorge Gutierrez, probably the more likely, or Andre Andrade, who so often replaced or played left back in the first half of the period. And we also have to change when it's a left winger. The backup position now could be Jose Luis Rodriguez, or still could be Joel Barcenes, who played it through most of the period. Okay, well, that's actually quite busy for just one position there. Let's hope things simplify a little on the right side. On the right side, right back position, we have two definite candidates here. The first is Michael Murillo, sometimes listed as Amir Murillo. He was selected for the final squad. He too overcoming injury. We talked about in part one, so we knew he was recovered, and he was selected for the final squad, as was the other definite candidate, Cesar Blackman, who we have mentioned also. We also have a likely candidate in Ivan Anderson, and he too was selected for the squad. So a lot of defenders here for Panama. They're a pretty defensive team. And those are all the candidates we have. So let's look at the right back position. Michael Murillo played the first two games of the 2023 Gold Cup, but then he got injured. So as we would expect, Cesar Blackman replaced him for game three. However, Blackman then got injured. So it was the ubiquitous, versatile player, Joel Barcenes, playing the last three games of the Gold Cup as a right back. Blackman returned from injury to play the September games of the 2023 Nations League group stage, and then Murillo returned from injury to play the October matches. And after that, Murillo continued in the position primarily, but replaced mostly by Blackman when he was out. Murillo got injured for a third time during the period for the March 2025 games, so was again replaced by Cesar Blackman. But we have seen Blackman in other positions. He even plays further upfield as well. So there we have it. Well, what we take out of that is Michael Murillo as a definite candidate if he is fit, which he isn't always. And then we have Cesar Blackman basically as the backup. Let's see if the recent games change our opinion on that. In the first game, the 3-4-1-2, it's a right winger position, and it's Blackman playing there. But in the second game, Michael Murillo starts as a right back. So how does that change? Well, we're a bit more reluctant to say Michael Murillo will be the starter. So we're going to change it to Michael Murillo as a likely starter and Cesar Blackman as a possible starter there. Okay, evening up the chances between them a little bit. And we have done the defense, and now we move on to the midfield. We begin with defensive midfielders. And we start with a versatile, not only as a versatile midfielder, but as a versatile player. We introduced him after central defenders last time. His name has already come up in defense. And I got to say, one of the most versatile players I've seen, because he literally is all over the field. We're going to see him all the way up to the to being a forward during this period. However, we won't see him in the cup, because I see that even though we had him as a definite candidate here, he was not selected even for the preliminary squad, and that is due to injury. So we'll give more details on that injury in section 3, but that's a big blow to Panama, a big loss, because he really is all over the field. Used quite a bit. He started 12 of their 16 games over the period. Actually, I see I had him as a likely candidate here, and that is actually because he missed the last 3 matches. We didn't know why. Now we do. I'll talk about it in section 3. Okay, so there is Edgar Yol Barcenas. Not selected, so a bad blow there. Let's look at the defensive midfielders, and we have another bad blow coming, because definite candidate Adalberto Carrasquilla was selected for the preliminary squad and not the final squad. I actually did look for a reason for that, because I'm really surprised. Carrasquilla was the most valuable player in the previous cup and has become a big name for them, but not selected for the squad here, just the preliminary squad. The other definite candidate, Annabelle Godoy, was selected for the final squad. The likely candidate, Abdiel Ayarza, was also just selected for the preliminary squad, and that is due to injury in his case. And then we had a possible candidate, Edward Cedeno, and he was selected for the final squad. Finally, we have a possible but unlikely candidate in Giovanni Welsh, but he was not selected for the final squad, just the preliminary squad for him. And I used the word finally, but I oughtn't to, because we have a new candidate here. New candidate. Well, actually not a new candidate, but he hadn't made our list because he last appeared for the national team in the 2021 Gold Cup there. And I do have something about him in May 2022. I do think he played in May of 2022. Anyway, he was so far off the squad that we didn't even have him as seemingly off the squad. He was just deep in the bowels of our soccer files. But we pulled him out because here he is, Victor Griffith. So I'll introduce him because he made the team here. He played from 2020 to 2022 with 11 caps. He's only 25 years old, so just dropped off the team. Perhaps a recent club change helped his cause. He moved from Panama to St. Johnston in Scotland. That's not a huge team, but it is has a bit of cachet to it. Since 2025, he has played for Arribe Unido, probably the biggest team in Panama there. But he also played in the USA with Portland Timbers B team and in Costa Rica too. So Victor Griffith was a squad member for the 2021 Gold Cup. He was a substitute, so only appeared in a B team game there, subbing into that, but nevertheless on the squad. It doesn't seem to have been a consideration by the time the 2023 Gold Cup came around. Anyway, there he is, selected for the final squad, and again, probably because Carrasquilla and Ayarza were not selected is why he was. Okay, that is defensive midfielders. We're going to move on to central midfielders. Here we have a definite candidate in Christian Martinez, and he was selected for the final squad. After that, we go all the way down to a seemingly off the squad player, and that is Martin Moran. Not as much off the squad as all that, though, because he did make the preliminary squad there, but not the final cut. We're going to cover the candidates in left and right midfield. There aren't many. For left midfielder, just one at the possible but unlikely level. It's Jose Murillo. He was at least named to the preliminary squad, but didn't make the final cut there. And right midfielders, the first one we have is at the possible level. That is Cesar Yanis, but he is selected for the final squad there. Next we have possible but unlikely Irving Gudino, not even selected for the preliminary squad. But one of our seemingly off the squad players, Victor Medina, did make the preliminary squad, but the other one, Darwin Pinzon, did not. Okay, those are all the candidates. We're taking one big bite of the midfield or defensive midfield all at once here, and let us look at our summary of the situation over the recent period. So we have Adalberto Carrasquilla and Annabelle Godoy as the pairing in the 2023 Gold Cup. There was a B team game there, and in that game it was Christian Martinez and Giovanni Welch playing there, suggesting they were the backup players. Christian Martin was really the backup player. He did step in when Carrasquilla or Godoy were missing, and Godoy was missing for the October games of the 2023 Nations League, and when he was injured right before the tournament, before the 2024 Copa America. So Christian Martinez stepping in for him in those situations. If you recall, Carrasquilla took a red card in game 2 of the Copa America, so Giovanni Welch played alongside Martinez for the last 2 games there. And in fact, it took until March 2025 for Godoy to return to his starting position. And by that time, it was the familiar pairing of Carrasquilla and Godoy. I presented it a bit cleanly there, missing out a bit of messiness during the fall of 2024. A few variations in the midfield there, but there we have it. We nevertheless come out of part 1, or at the end of part 1, with Carrasquilla and Godoy as the likely starters. Possible starter Christian Martinez, and then backup players Giovanni Welch and Abdiel Ayarza. Okay, we already have to take Ayarza and Carrasquilla off the list, though, because they weren't selected for the final squad. Let's see what things look like in the June games, the World Cup qualifying games. Well, as we would expect with Ayarza, Carrasquilla and Giovanni Welch also not selected, and that pretty much just leaves Godoy and Martinez as the logical starting pair, and so it was in the first game there. However, we've seen that the second game is quite experimental, and very experimental in this position. We have the returning Victor Griffith lining up alongside left attacker Jan-Paul Morales as the pairing in the second game. So a bit baffled by that, but we don't think it's much. It means much. We don't think those players are making a serious bid for the starting position. So how does that affect our predictions? Well, we are just going to say the likely starters now are Annabelle Godoy and Christian Martinez, but we're not confident enough to name a definite starter, especially after that second game. It confuses us a little bit. Okay, that is the defensive midfield in one big chunk. We move on to the attacking midfield, and well, we don't have a versatile attacker here, but I will tell you that Joel Barcenas did appear all over the place up front here as well. We begin with left attackers, though, and our definite candidate, Jose Luis Rodriguez, was selected for the final squad. We have no candidates at the likely level, but at the possible level, we have 4 the first of which is Ismail Diaz, and he was selected for the squad. And the other ones, Jean-Paul Morales, who we just met as a central midfielder, also selected for the final squad. But Cahiser Lenis and Freddy Gondola, both of those just making the preliminary squad. We have one player at the possible but unlikely level, and that is Ricardo Phillips, or Ricardo Phillips Hines. And he just makes the preliminary squad. And finally, we have Christian Quintero seemingly off the squad, and that seems to be the case, as he didn't even make the preliminary squad. Okay, so for left attackers here, we end up with three candidates: Jose Luis Rodriguez, Ismail Diaz, and Jean-Paul Morales. Let's look at the situation over the period. Well, this was very unsettled in the group stage of the 2023 Gold Cup. Three different players played in the position: Ismail Diaz, Joel Barcenas, and Freddy Gondola. All three of them vied for the position over the rest of the period, and they were later joined by Jose Luis Rodriguez there. Freddy Gondola was never really, Freddy Gondola was never really a strong contender here, but he did pop up a few times. Ismail Diaz had a good hold on the position after his incredible hat-trick in Game 4 of the Gold Cup in 2023, but after the World Cup qualifiers in June of 2024, he kind of dropped out of contention. Joel Barcenas dominated for periods both before and after that, and his main challenger in the latter half of the period was Jose Luis Rodriguez there, and Rodriguez actually played both of the games in March of 2024. So that left us thinking, again, not confident enough to say anyone is definite there, but likely starters Jose Luis Rodriguez or Joel Barcenas, and Ismail Diaz still a possible candidate. We're going to see he starts in one other position as well. The warm-up games, let's see how they inform us. Well, in the unusual 3-4-1-2 formation of the first game, we actually already noted that Jose Luis Rodriguez played as a left winger. That's because we were kind of viewing it as the left back pushing up into that position with a three-man defense. In the second game, it was Ismail Diaz starting as a left attacking midfielder in the more conventional 4-2-3-1 of the second game. So again, Joel Barcenas out of the picture now. So that leaves us thinking probably Jose Luis Rodriguez still as a likely starter, but Ismail Diaz may be strengthening his case, but we're going to leave him as a possible starter there. It's a bit of our opinion coming into it there. Okay, so that's the left attackers. Let's move over to the right side, where we have a definite candidate in Jose Fajardo, and he was selected for the final squad. Other than that, over here, we only have a player seemingly off the squad, and that is Jorge Serrano. Well, he did make the preliminary squad, but not the final cut. So that leaves us with Jose Fajardo, or more specifically, players who are not actually coded for this position, out of position players coming in. Let's look at the situation over the period. So like the left side, it was unsettled in the group stage of the 2023 Gold Cup. Here too, three different players playing in the position. One of them was Jose Fajardo, who's actually coded as a forward, but he did seize the position for all three of the final stage games. And Fajardo continued in the position, especially in the first half of the period. However, he did sometimes play as a forward, so he was replaced, sometimes by the ubiquitous Joel Barcenas, but increasingly by Jose Luis Rodriguez. So That's why we have Rodriguez coded as a winger, because he seems to play both sides fairly equally. And actually, those two, Barcenas and Rodriguez, have alternated quite a lot on the right and left side. They switch flanks regularly. Sometimes the formation calls for a right attacking winger, and in that case, it's often played by a more defensive player, especially Cesar Blackman. In that position. Okay, let's look at what we got. Well, no definite starters here. It's actually kind of tough to predict. But we're going to put Jose Fajardo still as the likely starter. And then we are putting winger Jose Luis Rodriguez and versatile midfielder Joel Barcenas as possible starters there. Let's see in the warm-up game. Well, in the warm-up game, that strange formation in part one, or the first game, I should say, the 3-4-2-1. We do see Cesar Blackman coming up to play as a winger there, and otherwise that's the closest thing we get to the right attacking position. In the second game, though, it's a right attacking midfielder, and it's a surprise. It's Cedeno. The defensive midfielder playing there, but once again, we'll say that was a bit of an experimental game or an experimental lineup against Guatemala there. All right, so does that change our opinion? Well, not really. We're just generally confused, but we're going to stick with what we got. Jose Fajardo as a likely starter, even though he didn't start any of these World Cup qualifying games, and Rodriguez and well, we have to take Barcenas off the list, of course, but yes, it never surprises us to see Jose Luis Rodriguez on the right side or the left side. Okay, we move to the central attacking midfield position, and in short, Panama rarely uses a formation that has this position. During the period we looked at, only once did they use a 4-2-3-1 formation, which requires a central attacking midfielder. However, we see in these warm-up games that they used that formation in the second one. And in the first one, the 3-4-1-2 formation, that attacking midfield line looks like a central attacking midfielder or a secondary striker. So we are seeing this position. Over the period, not counting those June 2025 games, the one time the position was used, it's unsurprisingly the ubiquitous Joel Barcenas there. However, we know he's not available for the warm-up games, so it would have to be someone else if they stick with this position. And in both of the games, it was actually right midfielder Cesar Yanis playing there. So yes, Barcenas out of the picture. He might have been there, but Yanis coming in. So we're going to say possible starter because we don't think they're going to use the position. So we'll say Cesar Yanis if the position is used. I mean, yes, okay, I'll move on. Let's talk, move on to forwards. Actually, we do have one player coded as a secondary striker. We saw that he didn't play in that game. And in fact, he was not selected. Oh, he was selected for the squad. Thomas Rodriguez, a possible candidate. But the one time they used the secondary striker position, he didn't play in it. So he's more of a sub. Okay, let's move on to the main forwards. No definite candidates here, but we do have Eduardo Guerrera at the likely level. He's actually coded as a left midfielder, but he is selected for the squad. We moved him here because this is where his only starts were during the period. Also, keep in mind Jose Fajardo, who we have as a right winger, but he did sometimes play as a forward as well. Possible candidate Cecilio Waterman is selected for the final squad as well. And we have possible but unlikely Everardo Rose, not selected even for the preliminary squad. And then 4 players seemingly off the squad, some of them big names actually. The first one, Alberto Quintero, not selected even for the preliminary squad. The second, Rolando Blackburn, not selected for the preliminary squad. However, the third and fourth were selected. Azarius Londono, a surprise selection, kind of coming in from the cold there. He was selected for the final squad. And the last of the 4, Alfredo Stevens, selected for the preliminary squad there. Okay, let's look at the position over the period. And we have none other than Joel Barcenas starting as a lone forward in the 2023 Gold Cup. Actually, it was 3 different players in the group stage. We also have, it's actually Alberto Quintero starting all 3 of the final stage games. So a bit undecided in all the offensive positions in the group stage, but things seem to settle in the final stage. Alberto Quintero as the forward. However, things remained unsettled after the Gold Cup with 5 different players in the position over the next 5 games. One of them was again Quintero, but he played his last game there in the fall of 2023. Left attacker Ismael Diaz actually came in for a cluster of games. He started 3 of the 4 Nations League final games in November 2023 and March 2024, and but didn't last in the position. Cecilio Waterman and Eduardo Guerrero both got 3 starts by the fall of 2024. The team sometimes using a formation with 2 forwards now. And each of those players, Waterman and Guerrero, had actually started one of the June 2024 World Cup qualifying games. Increasingly, though, in the second half of the period, Jose Fajardo played the position. That includes 3 of the 4 Copa America 2024 games and 3 of the 4 Nations League games in November 2024 and March 2025. So that prompts us to nominate him as the likely starter here. Again, things too unsettled for us to predict a definite starter, but likely starter Jose Fajardo, and then possible starters Cecilio Waterman and Eduardo Guerrero. We might have Ismael Diaz in that position, but he hasn't actually been in there for quite a while, so we don't want to crowd the names here. Okay, that's what our thinking was at the end of part 1, but let's see what happened in the warm-up games. We start with a two-man offense, and it is Waterman and Guerrero there. So our 2 possible starters. And then we get a surprise in the experimental second game. It is Jose Luis Rodriguez not playing as a winger, but playing as a forward. So a bit of a concern there with Jose Fajardo not used in either game. How does that affect our guess? Well, once again, we're a bit stymied by that and we don't know what to think. So we're just going to stick with what we got. Jose Fajardo as the likely starter. Maybe we'll move him down to the possible level and give a very vague prediction of 3 starters at the possible level. Jose Fajardo, Cecilio Waterman, and Eduardo Guerrero. But that's as sure as we can be. And I'm sure Panama fans are also waiting for the first game to see what it actually will be. Anyway, that concludes our business with the forwards here, and we move into section 3, and we want to welcome listeners to the short version of the mediacast, and partly for them, but as a review for others, we are going to do our spotlight review, which is where we race through the team at top speed to show who made the squad, and who we think the starters will be, our predictions. So let's begin with manager Thomas Christiansen. Been there since 2020, so he will lead them through the tournament. For goalkeepers, we had a definite candidate in Orlando Mosquera. He was selected. However, our likely candidate, Cesar Samudio, surprisingly not selected. We had Luis Mejia as a possible candidate, and he was selected. The surprise is the possible but unlikely J.D. Gunn, selected for the final squad there ahead of Samudio, and there we have it. In terms of starters, well, Orlando Mosquera was a starter for most of the period, but we got another surprise in the two warm-up games in June, where Luis Mejia was the starter in both. So now we think Mejia will be the likely starter and Orlando Mosquera a possible starter. On to defence, and we have a huge list of central defenders. We'll only look really at the ones at the possible level or above, unless we have reason to look at the less likely ones. We have three definite candidates here: Jose Cordoba, Fidel Escobar, and Edgardo Farina, all three of them selected for the final squad. They use a three-man defence, central defence most of the time. That's why there are so many candidates. At the likely level, we have two candidates: Carlos Harvey, who was selected for the final squad. Roderick Miller, though, was not, so another bit of a surprise there. And then two possible candidates, Giovanni Ramos and Martin Krug, both of those selected for the preliminary squad, but not the final squad. Below that, we have 7 candidates at the possible but unlikely level or below. 3 of them actually made the preliminary squad. We're only interested in Andres Andrade, who, after more than a year absent from the team, came back. He seemed to be off the squad, but here he is selected for the final squad. We looked at the warm-up games and revised our opinions as to who the starters will be. So we currently stand with Jose Cordoba as a likely starter, and then it really could be any of the others lining up with him. Again, usually a 3-man defense. So it could be Fidel Escobar, Edgardo Farina, Carlos Harvey, or Andres Andrade. Woo! On we go to the left back position. We have no definite candidate. We have a likely candidate in Eric Davis. He would be definite, except he's been kind of in and out during the period due to injury. Nevertheless, he seems to have overcome that injury and is selected for the final squad. And so is the other likely candidate, Jorge Gutierrez. Both of our possible candidates, though, only making the preliminary squad, Omar Valencia and Gabriel Brown. Bit of a complex situation in our predictions here. We think if Eric Davis is fit, he'll be the likely starter. If he's not, we could either have Jorge Gutierrez or Andre Andrade playing as a left back, or if the position becomes a left mid or left winger position, as it does with a 3-man defense, then we think it could be winger Jose Luis Rodriguez. Or, well, it can't be Barcenas, because we'll soon see that Barcenas was not selected for the squad. So it would probably be Rodriguez. And it was in the warm-up game, in one of the warm-up games. On to right backs. We have 2 candidates at the definite level, Michael Murillo and Cesar Blackman, and one at the likely level, Ivan Anderson. All 3 of those selected for the final squad. And for predictions, we have Michael Murillo as a likely starter and Cesar Blackman as a possible starter. Actually, they're pretty close to even odds, I would say. On we go to defensive midfielders, and we're going to introduce a player who's actually was all over the field. The only position he didn't play was goalkeeper, it seems. So a versatile player, Edgar Yol Barcenas. But a big loss for them he is injured and not selected even for the preliminary squad. So he's been filling in a lot of gaps for them, but they don't have his services here. An equally big shock coming up in defensive midfielders, with definite candidate Adalberto Carrasquilla not selected for the squad. We're not sure why. The other definite candidate, Annabelle Godoy, selected for the final squad there. Our likely candidate, Abdiel Ayarza, also surprisingly not selected for the squad. We did look into why these players weren't selected, but couldn't find a reason. So we have possible candidate Edward Cedeno selected for the squad. There. So let's do the other positions. I should mention we have newcomer Victor Griffith, not really a newcomer, but had been off the squad for quite a while, but reintroduced to the squad here, probably because of the absence of Carrasquilla and Ayarza. We'll finish the midfield candidates. For central midfielders, we have Christian Martinez as a definite candidate. He was selected, and that's all we'll talk about there, except when we get to right midfielders, we have a possible candidate in Cesar Yanis, and he was selected for the final squad. All of the candidates I'm ignoring there are at the possible but unlikely level or below, so we won't trouble ourselves with those. In terms of predicted starters, well, of course we would have said Carrasquilla as a starter, but now he's not available, so we think Christian Martinez and Annabelle Godoy will be the likely pairing in the midfield. All the way up to attacking midfielders here, and we begin with left attackers, where we have a definite candidate in Jose Luis Rodriguez, and no candidates at the likely level. Sorry, I should have said Rodriguez was selected as expected. No candidates at the likely level, but 4 possible candidates. The first 2, Ismael Diaz and Jean-Paul Morales, were selected. The second 2, Cahizer Lenis and Freddy Gondola, just making the preliminary squad. Our predictions on this side, again, not confident enough to say a definite starter, but likely we think Jose Luis Rodriguez. He also plays on the right side too, and actually as the forward in the most recent game. So he's pretty versatile. But we'll call him the likely starter here, and a possible starter, Ismael Diaz. On the right side, we only have one candidate, and that is at the definite level. It's Jose Fajardo, actually coded as a forward, but playing over here during this period. He was selected for the final squad, even though he didn't appear in the 2 June World Cup qualifying games recently. However, even despite that, we still think of Jose Fajardo as the likely starter, and winger Jose Luis Rodriguez also a possible starter over here, as he is on the left. No, we have him as likely on the left. Central attacking midfielder, they don't use the position much, only once over the whole period until the recent warm-up games or World Cup qualifiers, where they used the position twice. It would have been Joel Barcenas, except he's out injured, and we're pretty sure it's right midfielder Cesar Yanis if they use a formation with that position. On we go to the forward line. We actually do have one player as a secondary striker at the possible level, Thomas Rodriguez, but and he was selected actually for the final squad there. And finally, we have forwards, none at the definite level. There is Jose Fajardo, who did play as a forward during this period, though. At the likely level, we have Eduardo Guerrero, and he was selected, as was our possible candidate, Cecilio Waterman. He too was selected. Below that, at the possible but unlikely level or below, we had one player selected from players we thought seemingly off the squad, and that is Azarias Londono. So that's a bit of a surprise. That brings us to the end of our Spotlight review. and we move into other matters for Section 3, a review of surprises. Let's begin with notable non-selections. Well, the most notable for me, well, two big ones. Adalberto Carrasquilla not selected. Again, we're not sure why. Well, we should have Joel Barcelona here, but actually we're going to get to him later because that was because of injury. So Adalberto Carrasquilla, just a non-selection as far as we know. Can't be, though. It's got to be a reason for it. Okay, also notable non-selections, Cesar Samudio. We considered him a likely candidate. I don't think I said we considered Carrasquilla a definite candidate. But anyway, goalkeeper Cesar Samudio not selected, a bit surprisingly. And then we had Roderick Miller, who we considered a likely candidate. He did struggle with injury during the early part of the year, but we thought he was over it at least. That's when he was back playing on May 10th. So we think his non-selection may have something to do with the injury, but not directly. And as I said, we have a couple of players who were not selected due to injury. So we will talk about those in the injury section. Okay. Let's talk about surprise inclusions then. Some of these partly because of those missing players, but for goalkeeper, we have J.D. Gunn, basically taking the position of Cesar Samudio there. We had considered him possible, but unlikely. Andres Andrade, the central defender, we had thought he was off the team. Well, he was for more than a year, but brought back and named to the squad. And then same with forward Azarias Londono, had been off the team since the 2023 Gold Cup, but surprisingly named to the squad. New players, well, we had no brand new players, but we did have a player who was not on our list because he was off the team for quite a while. So Andres Andrade and Azarias Londono were on our list because they had played in 2023. This player, Victor Griffith, last appeared in 2022. And so we had to dig through the files to pull him out and present him here. That's Victor Griffith, and of course he had seemed to be off the squad. Let's do an update on injuries. On the graphic here, I have the image from what we had at the end of Section 2, and so we do have two players who we knew at that time were injury concerns, but they had actually recovered. So I'll just review the names there. Roderick Miller, although he wasn't selected for the final squad, and Michael Murillo, who was selected for the final squad, overcoming his injury. We had a close call. We weren't sure whether Abdiel Ayarza was going to make it. He was out with a knee injury since mid-October. We didn't have a lot of information on that injury, so we don't know if he returned to the field for the end of the season. But on his international page, he was not on... on his international page, he was still listed with the same injury. So it looks like that kept him out of the squad. I'm actually going to move these players down to here. And so we will say Abdiel Ayarza was dropped due to injury. Next, we have Eric Davis. He came up in part 1. He had been out with a knee injury, and I think I gave the wrong information about Ayarza. That was a lateral tear of the meniscus for him. I think that is the knee anyway. Eric Davis, though, it's a knee problem. He plays for a small club in Brazil, so we don't have any information on his club play. But we do know that he was not on the squad for the first warm-up match in June, but he was for the second, and he subbed in for 16 minutes of play. And the fact that he was selected, Eric Davis, for the final squad suggests he is on the road to recovery, but he may be coming in as an injury injury concern. So that is where we're going to place him as an injury doubt, but still on the roster. And finally, a new injury that happened after we did part one is Edgar Yol Barcenas. He suffered a cruciate ligament tear in late February. So actually, this is a bit of an odd situation. It was not after we did part one. It's just that we weren't aware of it in part one. When we did part one, his international page said he was just not selected for the last 3 matches, which did make us wonder. But it turns out that that non-selection was this cruciate ligament tear, which was way back in late February. So we should have known this when doing part two, but we really had nothing to alert it to us. As I say, it hadn't been reported on its international page. Okay, that's enough defending my embarrassment at not knowing. The fact that he was not selected for the preliminary squad suggests it's a fairly serious injury and there was no hope of recovery before the Cup, at least. So Edgar Yol Barcenas dropped due to injury there. And we do have one more. It was actually a player added to the preliminary squad. His name is Amar Modelo. We won't get into that. Added to the preliminary squad, but not selected for the final squad. He just has one cap since 2025 there. So he looked like he could be a candidate, but he has been out with a shoulder injury since late April. So Aymar Modelo, if he had a chance of getting on the squad, the injury probably got in the way. All right, that brings us to the end of our look at Panama, part two of Panama, the selections. But we do want to say that it is possible that there will be some problems for Panama or for someone else. In fact, we already have one Canadian who was named to the final squad who had to drop out and is replaced by another player. And there's usually a bit of that before the Cup. So what we've decided to do is to do a bonus episode just before the tournament, a last minute update on any changes that happen between the time we do the mediacast and the start of the tournament. So stay tuned for that. And meanwhile, we hope that our look at Panama has been as much fun for you as it was for us. We would like to thank Future Bass for the wonderful music you hear in this podcast. The title is called Alone.